This one is the speaker we need. You can leave yours.
We do not have,
Let's see if that works.
we are not getting the stream.
Well, that's okay. Well, oh, because it's not logged in. I know, it's still not coming in on the meeting, but it's still live streaming is the
It's
problem.
live streaming, it just isn't part of the meeting.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna see if I could figure out here.
And see what else Google has.
I'm gonna put your computer just up here on the top of this. Haha, there we go. Look at this, so here.
Pretty spectacular, all right. Unfortunately,
No, check it out.
we aren't streaming the meeting.
Yeah, we are.
Are we?
Yeah, we are. The YouTube part works perfectly.
So this is the back way, the back
Well-
alleyway of getting into the meeting here.
Well, let's see.
That's
So if
crazy.
well, it might be, and let's see if we can just click on the bigger screen. So you and I are the only ones here right now.
Oh, you're using my computer.
Well, it's up there, so, but, and it,
Let me get this.
but see, this is where the coding for is that could be up there, so then it's just so it's not bright enough.
So how is that projecting the people who are here? How is that working with doing what this is supposed to be doing?
Well, let's see. Okay, if I turn that one off, then you're not there. So that one can only do YouTube, the way I understand, that's why I wanted to experiment a little bit. Like, that can only do YouTube or the projector. It can't do both, is what I think you told me last time. And that's what seems to happen. So that's why I thought we could project whatever's on the meeting. But right now, it's just.
It's on YouTube.
Everything was on, which is weird, 4 minutes still. But see, you can put the chat up there. You know, so what I wanted was so that.
Oh, I think we need to take the chat right down. I think I can do that.
Well, but I mean, yeah, I wanted to be able to have the projector. Tell me if I'm gonna hold anything away. Oh, see, look, there's a lot of code here. So this is what I was hoping is that we could put that on the screen in case we have some audience.
I think that we had better log out of that account, my account. That's my account.
That is your, that's
And
your.
log into the Town of Bluff account. And then,
Oh, which one did it go out from Town of Bluff?
yes, it went out from Town of Bluff. So,
So
log.
we can't let anybody in unless. did you
Right.
Let's try it.
Right,
But this one won't
right.
let
No,
us
I'm gonna shut this one, down,
Okay. Is this one?
this particular item. And I'm going to go into my Firefox, because that's what I like. Understand it clearly. I'm going to
So
go
you're going into Office. Should we try to go into
Hang on.
Office from here?
Hang on.
Let's try. Don't kill that one yet. Let's try it going in from here. Let's try Office.
Fine, go for it. We've got 1 minute left before the meeting.
Okay, let me see if this works. Office@townbluff.org, and then what's That's the Bluff. You remember that?
No.
Let me see. I can find it here.
Well, I'm gonna have to bring this up.
Okay, but this is. See, I had that after it was. Oh, let's see, I know what it is. It's BL22 exclamation mark? No.
There's Jim,
Yes.
and you're muted, but that's okay. Or you're at the community center too.
If I unmute you, it really is loud in here.
Still muted, but I assume maybe you're talking to Luann.
Okay, try.
And do we have Brand?
Yes. Let's see. So just, I'll kill mine.
No, I am
But you can-
muted and I cannot unmute.
I just text him, but I'll give him another minute and we'll go ahead.
Just a second, I have to look up for that.
Okay, Brand's on. And Lou, are you on? We're gonna go into the record ride.
Okay, can you hear, I guess you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, we're in.
Okay, it's 6:02 p.m. This is March 8th, 2022. This is the Bluff Town Council regular meeting. Let's do roll call. Linda Souza.
Jim Sayers?
Luann's muted. Frank Murray.
Luann's right here, she's working.
Okay, watched you run across the gym floor.
All right, then we're doing it.
And Lefferts. The first thing is the approval of the Bluff Town Council meeting minutes for March 1st, 2022. Has everybody read them? And are there any changes, comments, corrections?
They look good to me, Mayor. Motion to approve is presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Unanimous. Now this week I did manage to get the public comment on here. So if anyone from the public would like to speak, you have 3 minutes. If you exceed 3 minutes and you don't have permission to continue going, the Sayers will mute you. So do we have any people who want to make a public comment? And if you do, I'm assuming Jim has the chat box up right now.
I'm going to turn it, yeah, it's still up, I believe, yeah.
Okay, anybody have any public comment? All right, then we will close off the public comment and move to number 1, which is the update on the town manager job position. I met with Erin Richards and made a couple of changes that we had all talked about and sent those out to everyone, but I believe Erin is also in the meeting and she'd like to go over some information that she put together on the wellness and stipend and policy. So Erin, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi there, can you all hear me? Fantastic, okay. Let me just go ahead and get that pulled up. I was expecting public comments, so give me just a second. In the meantime though, I did want to share that we did get the town manager position posted to Indeed.com. You can find that out there now. Bluff, Utah. A few things to note before I get to that wellness stipend, if you don't mind, Anne. Under the description, we had talked about posting a couple other positions. I can send this overview to you after this meeting, but I just wanted to share some information I found about the costs associated with posting to other sites. Indeed, it's free. However, the best way that we'll be able to manage this is reposting it weekly, as paying for it kind of gives you prime position, but the free position, just to get them to the top of the board, we will have to repost. Otherwise, it's a cost per application, which starts at $42, which seems a little steep for me, so I think we should probably start with the free option and then go from there. For cooljobs.com, they changed their pricing policy recently. It's now $99 for a 14-day listing. I would propose that we wait to post if we don't see anything in the next 3 to 4 weeks. ZipRecruiter has a 5-day free trial, and then after that, it's $16 to $24 per day. So again, I would propose, let's see what we can get from the free ones. And then finally, Simply Hired. It is priced per applicant as well, $9.99 per applicant, kind of depending on the job type. So again, I propose we stay in these free platforms, and then perhaps you all can talk about if you'd like to post to some paid sites. But I do think that starting with the free and then going from there would be smart. However, I know the position needs to be built, so something for the council to think about. Now on to the wellness policy draft that I have. Did everyone get a copy of that, or how in-depth would you like me to go in the description?
Everyone should have received a copy of it.
Okay, I'll just go over some kind of highlights and then take questions. I also know that you have a work session, so I'll go through this pretty quickly, but let me know what questions you have. So for the draft, I just have, pretty much basic policy that the big thing to know is that a wellness stipend would be a taxable income amount. So this, really does play into that holistic benefit package, if you will. I know there was a lot of discussion about, the 40, the 50, the 60. This is a taxable benefit for the associate. The main thing that I want you all to think about are what areas would you like to cover? So I kind of proposed a little bit of a checklist of, is this just going to be something that is going to help cover health insurance costs? Certainly, I would highly recommend including mental health support as well. I think that, certainly the safety niche falls into health and wellness. But then you really think about, is it a health and wellness benefit for you to cover outdoor gear? Are hiking shoes part of health and wellness? That's something that I want you all to decide. I will just kind of put it out there that many
shut everybody down. We'll be back. I think they're still going, actually.
think they're just
Can't quite hear
playing
you.
the system. and-
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Erin.
Okay, so I would just say, when you all have time, I know you've got a packed schedule as always, when you have time, you think about what would be appropriate to include. I will say everything that I have listed can be found on some company's wellness stipend somewhere. But you just decide, how focused or how broad you want this policy to be. And then, from there, it's easy. Receipts will be submitted. It'll kind of fall into, I shouldn't say easy, I know Linda will add a little bit. And then that would be the question too, is if you wanted to do monthly, if you want to do annually, and then as you make your selection, kind of think of how those would fall. So, if it's a ski pass, for example, I know y'all don't have a ton of skiing out there, but a ski pass would be easier to reimburse as a one-time big bulk annual stipend as opposed to insurance, for example. If that's the focus, maybe that's a monthly stipend amount. So that's all I've got unless y'all have questions.
Does anyone on the council have a question? Then I'll hold mine till after you ask. Okay, so Erin, my question is for ease of accounting. Is it possible to just say, it's $100 a month, so $1,200 a year, and just the person survives through the first year with us. At the end of that year of work, have that employee submit whatever receipts they have, like do a one-shot review, and maybe even pay ahead of time that $1,200, and then subject to verification at the end of the work year.
Certainly something you would probably want to run by an accountant. My gut feeling is that you would probably want to match it a little bit more closely than that. So if you are thinking monthly, I would say receipts would need to be in between 30 and 60 days later to avoid any conflicts. That's my gut feeling. Then again, I've never implemented one of these personally, but I think, for the checks and balances and everything, I would, at the very least, maybe you could do that down to quarterly, perhaps, maybe have them submit quarterly. I probably wouldn't prepay, however. I would say if we're truly calling this a wellness stipend, there need to be receipts associated before payment is made to the employee.
Does anybody else have a question?
Comment there. This little package that Eric's talking about, we could use it as a negotiation event, and when we're talking to a candidate, say, what's important to you in this wellness or magnitude, and talk about it and use it as sort of a negotiation and kind of like with this person. So just an idea.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Erin. We're going to be talking about this again in the work session. I just would like to throw out that when Erin and I talked about there was a cost associated with almost every one of the online sites, I still think we want to take a look at publishing in High Country News. And that can be very inexpensive, it can be very expensive. So I'll bring the information to the work session, but I think that we still want to do that right from the beginning. Maybe hold up, as Erin suggested, on these others, so we can go into more depth on Thursday. Linda?
Is also published on our website and at the post office.
Thank you.
That array of possible services that can be paid for, we'd have to arrive at which of those we want, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we can probably narrow it down. The ski passes, well, somebody might want to travel to ski. Let's talk about it on Thursday then.
Oh, yeah.
So what we'll do is decide about High Country News, the online posting, and then what coverage area and how we would use it, putting that out to an applicant. Okay, then we can move to number 2. Lou, I just put this update on priority telecommunications so that it stayed on my radar. So I don't know if you've had time to do anything with
I
that.
have not contacted this particular one, but in a couple of my.
Okay, you're muted.
If you can't hear me, okay,
Right here.
can you hear me over here? Can you hear me?
Better, yes.
Okay, so maybe now can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, we have our speaker through our system here going. So I haven't contacted her yet, but I have been thinking about it, and I talked to a couple of conversations. There might be another option too that I want to look at and see if it is maybe a possibility. So I will bring that all back maybe by, well, I guess the work session we don't have it on, but I'm working on it.
Okay. Thank you. Then, of course, I did just what I apologized for last week. I put Michael down, coming without talking to him. I see that he's in the meeting. Sorry, Michael,
That's all right, no problem.
so do you want to update?
Yeah, so crack sealing will be completed tomorrow. All that's left is Cottonwood Avenue, and they'll complete 6th Street East. That was the holdout to see how things went. And so yesterday was not a productive day because of a couple of things. They started off with a bad battery, and that they were delayed getting to town. And it turned out there was moisture in the cracks, so they couldn't seal anything, but they were able to blow everything out. And what's left is, as I mentioned, in Cottonwood Avenue, is about 400 linear feet of road surface. So, weather permitting, at the end of the day tomorrow, the 7.325 paved miles within the Bluff boundaries will have been crack sealed for the 3 winters. So that's where we're at.
What was the number of miles? 7 point?
325.
Well, thank you very much for getting this done. And it looks like if we don't get any rain or snow, we should be good to go. Would it be your recommendation, Michael, if we wake up and the pavement is damp, to let them know so they don't come back down?
Yeah, do you expect rain there tonight, or did you check the weather?
Depends on which person you're talking to.
Oh, okay, yeah. So if it's like that, yeah, we should give them a heads up, because yesterday I had tracked the weather through the weekend, and they did too, and we thought it'd be okay to, have a full day. It didn't work out that way, but. So one thing about yesterday, we should have a savings of about close to $1,000 because they weren't able to use any of the blocks, that the tar blocks. That's a savings of $500. They didn't use the machine. That's a savings of $330. So
Okay, good.
yeah.
Well, thank you. I'll just try to look out in the morning. Mike from San Juan County and I've been exchanging texts in the morning, so if I have a
Okay, good.
if I have a question about how it looks, I'll text him and maybe take a photo and send it to him to give me an idea of whether they should come down or not.
Right. So there's only Cottonwood Avenue, left, So, so then you got my update on the transportation board meeting.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
thanks.
That's it.
Okay.
All right.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
All right, then we can move to report on the meeting of the CCC Design Review Team and fire suppression status.
Yeah, the meeting came off at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and the last minutes we had to approve were from February 22nd. There's been a little break in the minutes, but we're back on track here. We approved an agenda that included the CCC updates, funding proposals, policies, and strategic timeline. And another thing came up as well. But you had a specific question about the funding. or the fire suppression system. That is part of a four-phase idea that we've come up with of remodeling the community center. It's going to be in 4 phases. And we did that because the full 4 phases is going to cost a lot more money than each of the individual phases. And we are applying for different amounts in grants. Without going into too much detail, we've got one out there for about $50,000. We're going to have another one out there for $50,000, and we've got some lines on some money. But we have nothing solid yet for fire suppression, but it might occur. We don't have any cost estimates that are current, and that's an issue, and we're going to get somebody that knows what these things cost and get somebody in there. That's the idea, latest on the fire suppression. Funding proposals, we're reaching out for everything we can get, and if anybody wants to know all the places we're reaching, let me know. The policies, the expense division, as far as I know, is okay. I've brought it up a couple of times. No one seems to have a problem with that. I came up with the rules of order. I wanted to make sure that the agenda was also being approved. It's a little more inclusive since I'm sort of taking this on, but I don't want to be the agenda person, really. The usage, we have not had any policy on the usage, and it is going to be used. The intention of UDB is to have a feed on April 16th and do most of it. They're probably going to try to have a tent out in the back there and cook a whole bunch of food and feed some people and have a celebration of sorts. I said we'd talk about it at the meeting here today. We want to remember that we don't have, and I'm cautioning them in lieu of a policy that I'm reminding we do not have the certificate of occupancy. We can probably get away with using the kitchen, I hope, but they've agreed to come up with several porta potties, and that should work. And try to keep people, for the most part, out of the building unless they're cooking. So I'm hoping that's going to go forward. But do we need to talk about that a little bit?
I need to go back and look at a couple of things, but I don't think the kitchen can be used until you have the certificate of occupancy. So let me pull out the information on the CO. My recollection is that there are 2 things. You can use the building for storage and for maintaining equipment related to animals, like feed equipment and that kind of thing. But I have to go back, and I don't have that book here. It's in the office. Why don't I try to look at that first thing tomorrow?
Sounds good.
The other thing is I have reached out to San Juan County. We may need to have an inspection of the kitchen prior to use. But I think that would be pretty easy to get if that's true. But I think it's more of the CO.
Yeah, that I could probably follow up with San Juan County unless you're already in contact with somebody that could maybe inspect that kitchen.
It would be Ronnie Neves, if I'm saying his last name.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know Ronnie. I'll give him a call and ask him what the story is. Okay.
And I think it might not even need to be inspected if we're not renting it out commercially. So you might throw that in and ask them if it's just use or if it's commercial rental use.
Nope. I'll check it out. So I can do that. The last thing we talked about was a strategic timeline for the interior remodel. The subdivision is predicated on the interior remodel, so we want to get that. That's really priority 1, is the whole interior remodel, which basically is very superficial paint. I mean, it doesn't go into structural components. It's paint, flooring, Ceiling, tiles, probably the hanging system is going to stay, and definitely the bathrooms need some work. I can't think of what else right now. No windows, we'll see about doors, but no rearranging of walls or anything structural at all. So that's really going to be sometime in the first 2 phases of this project, no doubt. I mean, that's really a priority. We want to get that done as soon as we can. So that's what we're aiming at. If we can get it done piecemeal by doing the fire suppression system and then getting the remodel, I don't think they're going to interfere with I don't think the remodel will interfere with the fire suppression, to tell you the truth. So the fire suppression is still number one.
Jim, the other thing, Heather talked about an office in the modular, and we need to let the council know that they would like to talk about that. And we talked briefly about whether or not we could, start that right away, but just another FYI.
Yeah, Heather is in need of an office. She is their accountant. She's doing a lot of work actually near her home right now. And it's pretty severe need. So I'll talk to Ronnie Neves about this and see what happens.
Well, as far as I know, the modular does not need the certificate of occupancy.
Good.
But that's my understanding. And the food pantry can just stay on one side and they can use the other side if they're willing to do that, because this is, as we know, it's UDB's modular under the division.
Yeah, they're willing to do that. That probably, if we can do it easily, that's probably what's going to occur sooner rather than later. She has a lot of work to do.
His Wi-Fi and phone will have to be put in, but this is the first time it has come up, and we wanted to let you guys know we're planning and thinking about that.
Yeah, right now her phone is working as a Wi-Fi hotspot, and it can do the same for indefinite amount of time in that workroom if necessary. But we're going to check and see what the wireless situation is over there.
We have turned off the electricity to the modular because it's costing us $250 a month plus. So if we can turn it on, possibly we can turn it on her half. But that's something actually we need to address, not necessarily right now, but.
I think we can, I think they may, I'll bring that up, Linda, and we'll get that ascertained before this occurs. But I think my sense is that if we're heating half of that, I think they're probably going to go for it. But, this is necessary work that she has to do, and she needs a space, just like we all do.
Yeah. Another thing, the 4-phase plan sounds really good, but we need to see it. We maybe haven't quite finished drafting it yet, but
Right.
according to our contract, it's supposed to come to our council and their council before we agree to do it. So.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'm bringing it up tonight, and it's in the process of being drafted. At least one of our applications for funding is talking about it, so it's got to be structured. That's why I had it in the meeting today. Any other questions? Comments? Advice? Suggestions?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Number 6, the update on the accountant search. Stay tuned, I'm still doing the search. I've been missing my phone calls with Larson, who is looking for a second referral possibility. I call, then they call me back, and I'm not at my phone, so I'm going back and forth. I started with emails now, so hopefully by next week I'll have an accountant on on board to offer to all of us.
Can we go back to 5?
Oh, no, I want to move the meeting along, Jim, you're being so picky. Sure. Let's go for it.
That's fine, just let me know.
Thank you. So, at the work session, for San Juan County, there's a lot of discussion about revision of the bylaws for their Planning and Zoning Commission. And they did not have a revised planning and zoning bylaw prepared. They were just talking about how they would be revising it if they would do that. And part of it is, how do you do the search for new planning and zoning commissioners? What is the actual length of the term? Is it 2 terms? Is it unlimited terms? And then what do you do for replacement or removal or missed meetings, that type of thing? So it kind of stay tuned for future work by San Juan County. With that being said, I believe that Matt McDonald was going to re-advertise the ad for Bluff because our current representative decided not to run for another term. And what would happen then is Matt wants to run another ad to see how many applicants he gets. So for those of you listening who want to apply for planning and zoning in San Juan County, I'll give you a heads up as soon as it runs in the San Juan record, but hopefully it'll run in the next couple of weeks and we'll have some applicants. There was another long discussion in the meeting about what the state law requires in terms of experience and what would Mac McDonald and San Juan County like to require for planning and zoning. And I intend, once I see what their bylaws and their rewrite is, when they get to running the ad and doing the interview process, I'll probably try to get some consensus from all of us as to how important it is that somebody actually have planning and zoning experience versus the ability to learn and the willingness to learn planning and zoning. If you look at a town this size, we're going to have one heck of a time finding somebody who's interested in being on planning and zoning, who was on planning and zoning somewhere, wants to drive an hour one way for a meeting. And so I'm going to really try to get input from all of you about what we would like to see on planning and zoning for experience and requirements versus what perhaps San Juan County would like to see. I don't know how well we'll pull it off, but let's have that conversation once I know what the bylaws look like or what Mac is going to be doing.
It's a really important position over the next 8 years, Mayor, so thank you for your diligence on this. It's kind of the critical time for San Juan County in many ways.
Well, it's really critical for LaSalle or for the Spanish Valley area because my understanding is they may be trying to incorporate, and there was a statement made in the meeting that for Spanish Valley in particular, it would be very important to have developers as the representatives for planning and zoning, which if you put on all developers on the planning and zoning, you're going to get development. And I think that it needs to be a broader picture for the county, not just focused on development. And that's certainly one part of it, but there's a whole lot of other things like quality of life that goes into that. So stay tuned, I'll get back on that. And I think that was it on number 5. Any questions, thoughts?
No, No, thank you, that's good, thank you.
All right, then I jumped ahead to number 6. We'll go down to number 7. The meeting with Dr. John Barentine, who's the consultant with Dark Sky Consulting, and then from Luann's report on Dartmouth and Bluff. There was a meeting, a virtual meeting with Dr. Barentine, who was really knowledgeable, and I thank Diana Davidson for finding him. That was a big plus. And kind of getting right to the bottom line is he's willing to be a consultant as much or as little as we need him to be. He charges, I believe it's $2.50 an hour, and once we decide what we need from him, he can tailor a contract to cover the services. He can go from, he could do essentially everything on the dark sky application if we wanted. But he said we're quite a ways into what we need for the dark sky application. You get the application in, and then you have a period of time to do everything and get it wrapped up. Most communities take anywhere from a year to 3 to 5 years to get dark sky designation, but because we already have an ordinance and we've got people willing to be on a committee, and we have now Friends of Cedar Mesa willing to help with light metering and forming a group for dark sky, not dark sky planning, but dark sky activities, and because Friends of Cedar Mesa with Sarah Barak and Jen Davila involved who've already had dark sky programs, we're clicking through a lot of the requirements. So I think what we need to do is define how much or how little do we need a consultant at this point. A lot of it we're already doing. He has worked on ordinances, but I think that what we need to do is take a look at what areas have been identified as either problematic or something we want to work on ourselves first before we hire anybody to actually do the work. And I think along with that, we need to look at what the sample ordinances or recommended ordinances are from Dark Sky International, the group that does the designation. But it was an excellent meeting, and these are the people so far that I've had contact from who want to be involved on the committee. But of course, I need to move to a different screen here for a second. So Jen Davila has expressed interest, Diana Davidson, Grant Murray, Wesley Shook. We need to have somebody probably for planning and zoning, which I imagine might be Sarah or Amanda, but we'll let them obviously decide. And then that committee would be working on all the things that we need to do for the application. I sent a flow chart out to all of you about a week ago, I guess, just so that we can, in a work session, sit down and look at the tasks and timelines of who's going to do what. And this is just a first draft. Kathleen Packish put it together. I've added a couple things, but I think if we look at this as a roadmap to how to accomplish the goal of one, compliance with our ordinance, whatever that looks like, and dark sky designation requirements. I think we're along. You know, we've got a lot of work, but I think it can all be done. Lou, do you want to talk about what the light measurements were like?
Sure. Do you want to turn yours off and I'll turn mine on?
I see your lips moving, so I don't know if you're talking to Jim or you're talking to...
I think, yeah, so turn your microphone off.
Turn my microphone off, it's
Yeah.
off. You mean my mic's off.
The other one's on. Well, can you hear me? Oh, we've got-
Barely.
How about now?
It's better.
Okay, we're getting a little bit of echo back because we've got our speaker. This won't work. Okay, maybe turn.
Turn yours off and speak into this. Turn yours off and speak into this.
I've got to go over to this one because that one just killed my computer. Multiple people on it.
Oh.
So for everybody, the silences is that both...
Technical difficulties.
Okay, can you...
So now it's shut when it's off. Okay. Let's see.
Maybe we should try this report another time. What do you think?
Okay, so, can you hear me now? Okay, but I can't hear you. So, all right, well, anyway, I did take this little meter, okay. So this is the sky quality meter that Diana Davidson got, and you can maybe see on the bottom there, there's a range of light from 16 that's underneath the street light up to 21. And then at the end of 21, of course, would be 22, but that's dark sky and with all those stars on it. So what I did was I went around town, and our town is pretty large, but I hit places out of town and then right by businesses and right in town. I went out to Comb Ridge, out on by the old highway at that monument there. I went out to the dump road turnoff by the Sticky Gate, it's called. I went to the hill up above on, I don't know what the street would be, by Nikki and Dave's house right there in front of their house. Took a reading there, 7th West in the South Alley. I went to the 3rd West by the school in Cottonwood intersection. Went just beside the laundromat on 2nd East. Went to Cemetery Hill at the gazebo, the community center parking lot. Went down to the shade structure on the river trail, Cow Canyon's parking lot, Bluff Dwellings driveway, the gravel pit up on top of the hill, and turn off to the footbridge, and then into the new Bluff Elementary School parking lot. And so all of them were over 21, which on that little scale, 21 is the max. 22, I believe, is like as dark as you can get. But with the stars, you get some light. So it's not complete darkness like in a dark room. You get some light, and it maxes out at, it shows 21 on the scale, but we were over 21 on all of the readings at all those stations, except in the school parking lot. And that's the one that has all the street lamps going, and the parking lot's real lit up. In fact, when I pulled out, I didn't realize I didn't have my headlights on. So that's a bright spot on the ground, but it's still, if you do the sky glow from right there, it was reading 17. So that's, it's still on the chart, but it's the one underneath the street lights. If you do it inside a house, it will drop to 10, 8, 10 and stuff with lights on. So anyway, those were all really great readings. I did it on March 2nd, which was a new moon, so complete darkness. There was no cloud cover, and it was about 9:30 to 10:30 that night. So Diana Davidson had sent some things around on what's required when you report back to keep your designation established, and that's one of the things you do is report where you take them, do them I think 3 times a year. And I did 14 sites, so we probably don't need that many to do it, but that was a first reading with this review.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Whoa. That's kind of creepy. Very good, Luann. Lots of work. Thank you.
We can go into more depth in a work session, but thanks, Lou, that's really helpful. It also gives me another thing to add to the list to talk to the superintendent about, if I ever am able to get him on the phone to do that. So thank you. Then, Lou, I think you have the update on Planning and Zoning Commission meeting as well.
Okay. Try this again. I have to turn our volume down when we get all that feedback.
That's me, probably. Hang on. Oh no, I'm not on.
So Planning and Zoning met March 2nd, and a lot of their meeting was made up of, there were 3 land use clearances that were applied for, 2 out in Copper Cliffs, in the subdivision out there, and 1 in town here, right, sort of behind the north of the laundromat. in that area. All three were approved, and were passed on for getting building permits and whatnot. There was, sorry, I meant to start with, the first was a public comment. Steve Simpson came to request that the building next to the beach, if they bought it, they would like to try to figure out how to put 2 apartments in there. And they were trying to figure out if they demoed that and built a unit there on, it would be a small lot, and what the setbacks and all the rest would be. So they have all those questions in front of them, but they're looking at studio apartments in that little space beside them. And and then they discussed kennels quite a bit. They want to, seems like the consensus was to keep F1 as a helpful zone for the future. They are concerned, wondering if they can remove C3 in the zoning without another public hearing. And then A2 was discussed, and allowing that zone, and whether or not it's too close to residential areas. They also discussed conditional use, then like kennels could be allowed anywhere, but they'd have to meet a certain condition to be there. And let's see. And then they also had a definition change for kennels, talking about saying that a kennel was an indoor space, which would definitely help on the noise factor. So, and then the other thing was the ordinance on their final edits. They are planning to review, edit, change, and vote, and then pass it to town council for our review and vote sometime in April. And that's what I wrote down from my notes. Are there questions?
I heard, some discussion about being able to take C3 out, but I believe it needs to be noticed in a public hearing held on it. It wasn't anywhere in the notice that was mailed out to people, and there was nothing in the discussion and drafting. So public comment couldn't be held on it. So my take on it is, if people want to discuss the C3 removing it, they're going to have to go back and do another notice in public hearing. If people think otherwise, we can run it by Chris. The planning and zoning wants to do that, but there's no notice to the public that that was an option or a discussion point. The rest of it sounds like it's moving along pretty well. I know that we're getting a fair number of comments, meaning the town email has had comments on the kennels and on the noise ordinance. So, those are things we're going to need to tackle pretty quickly, just part of the work session. Any questions for Lou or comments? Okay, thanks, Lou.
There was one comment in the minutes that I thought I might clarify. There was a question of whether or not a noise ordinance was on our list of things that we're looking at in the future. They thought it was not on the books at all, and I said, no, that it's definitely on our radar, but it wasn't in our immediate queue of projects. So if that needs corrected, that's fine too, but that's what I updated them when they said that it wasn't anywhere in our realm. I said, no, it is, along with the light ordinance, light trespass and noise trespass. So, anyway, that was all.
Number 9, workers' compensation liability and property insurance renewals with the trust. I finally got the workers' compensation one completed and submitted for the second time on this application, the third time in the last year. So I'm hoping that it passes the review. I worked on the property insurance renewal and submitted that, and now I'm down to liability, but Linda and I will need to meet because I need dollars and specific amounts on how much money we spend on payroll, how much money we spend for buildings and that kind of thing. And it's due by May 1st, so I'd like to meet with Linda sooner rather than later, because now we're going to start moving into the budget 2023 and amended budget 2022 in the next 2 months. So I'd like to get that one off the plate as well. There really wasn't much change in workers' compensation or property insurance. The CCC project did show up in the property. It wasn't easy for me to figure out the uploads, but once I got into it, I could see that it had been added. So that looks like that was current. We could just approve it. Any questions or thoughts on the insurance? Okay, if not, moving to new business. The gravel pit that's up on the bench, there were some questions from the public about what, and comments how large it's become, but also some questions on whether or not the lease that was in place has been followed. So the lease, which I think I sent to everybody, has a provision in it. Let's see, where is it? The lease is between Sitla and Sondrager. And it's under operations, number 8. And it's 8.2, plan of operations, A3, or A2 rather. And it says, permittee, that would be Sondrager, shall obtain a conditional use permit from the applicable local land use authority as part of the plan of operations submitted to Sitla. I sent the lease off to our attorney to have him take a look at it, but in the meantime, I sent an email to Brian Torgerson, who is pretty much the director for Sitla in this area. And I talked with him today. It was interesting. He said that there's a lease manager, and I didn't catch the name. It was Adam something up in Salt Lake that I can get a hold of. And this lease has been, well, this gravel pit has been in operation for, he said, quote, a number of years. And that, quote, he doesn't know the answer to my question about whether or not whether or not Bluff would have had to engage in a conditional use review, because his opinion is that San Juan County approved it pre-incorporation, and the operation was in existence for several years prior to incorporation. And he referred me instead to Mac McDonald or someone in the county to get that question answered. So that was today late in the afternoon, and I didn't have time to do any further phone calls, but I'll get back with, I'll start with Mac McDonald, but I'll track down whoever Adam in Salt Lake City is. What I pointed out to Brian is this lease copy was signed November 2nd, 2021, which would have been during our incorporation. And so I think, unless the four of you disagree, I think I should just continue to follow up to see whether or not they should have come to the town of Bluff to get some kind of consent.
Excellent, Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that we need to follow up on that. They are now applying for this permit, an extension of a permit. Is that the chronology here?
No, what Brian said,
Why did this even come up is, I guess, my question. If it's already grandfathered in and so forth, what's the deal?
that's exactly the question I have. I don't understand why there's a lease that's dated November 2021 that has that requirement in it, and they're not obligated to comply with that. And Brian's position was that this gravel pit was in existence prior to incorporation and that the county had signed off on other leases. But I don't know enough about gravel leases and when they take effect, except that if you read through the lease, which I just read the applicable pieces that but the term commences on the effective date, that's under paragraph 2. No, it's under paragraph or section 4, term, commences on the effective date and continues for 10 years the operating term unless sooner terminated. So to me, unless I could find something that I've missed, when it started was when they signed it. That's what that would say to me. It wouldn't. But again, I'm not an expert on gravel leases, so I got to keep digging. And Mary Gillum, yes. You're muted. Oh, good job.
Okay, yeah, so Ann sent me the lease and I read through it carefully. I guess I have 2 questions. You know, possibly they signed this document because the previous 10-year period, if they're signing these leases for 10-year periods, maybe the previous 10-year period ended and so they had to renew it. But I think a question would be whether this lease is for the same area as the previous lease or not, because if it's for a larger area or a different area, then maybe the town would have some basis to, you know, have an opinion about this, even if mining had begun in some parts of the property earlier. And then, let's see, I just wanted to mention that what the lease says is that it doesn't actually start at the time when the lease is signed. It starts at the time when Sonderegger provides a mining plan.
Those are all really good points, Mary. Let me follow up a little bit more with what San Juan County may or may not know. But there was nothing in the lease that I could find that this was either an extension of an existing lease or anything that would indicate there was something prior to this one. And this is 185 acres of settler land, which is pretty large, as pointed out. I want to thank Josh Ewing for bringing this to our attention. So it's something that you'd think I would have picked up on the noise out in the canyon, but I hadn't until it was pointed out to me. So I'll just keep working on it. I'll get back with everybody. Any other thoughts? Thanks, Mary. Those are excellent.
Yeah, I would just say that it's obvious when you look at, you know, that map that I made and sent you that a good portion of the area included in this lease has been previously mined. But there are portions of the area that haven't been previously mined, where I think they're hoping to mine. And so, you know, those would be the areas that might not have been in the previous version of this lease.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you have put time into this. I feel better with the questions than the questions I have. Thank you. All right, then, if there's nothing else, we can move to number 11, update on Community Impact Board, the 2023 list of properties. Jim, do you want to cover that?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, we were called by Michael Bryant as a reminder that they had to update their list of capital projects, and they're going to go through a prioritization at the end of the month. And he just wanted to check if we wanted to add anything. And we had 2 projects on there. One of them is the Culture Center, Cooperative Culture Center, and the other is the secondary water project. And the secondary water has been on there for a long, long time. But I thought as long as he was on the hook, we could add the repair of historic downtown streets. And I hadn't checked with Michael's emails over the course of these events, but we were able to get that item on the CIB list, which is always the starting point of getting any funding. Even though I kind of, I just said 100,000, I didn't know what I was talking about, but it's there. But that can be adjusted, as we know, from CIB up. But I thought that the street repair, they won't subsidize the regular, or they're unwilling to subsidize regular street repair because we do get funding for that. But I mentioned that it's just really gone beyond patchwork down there, as Michael has pointed out very many times. It's utterly collapsed. And after I talked to Michael after I did this, he said about $1 million is what it's going to take. So I think, well, I thought that's a lot of money, but if you look at the capital projects list this year, apparently there are some big spenders that are, and I don't mind using those words, but they're big projects, and they seem to feel that there's going to be a real windfall of funding, because there are 2 or 3 projects by a 7-county consortium that I've never heard of before, and then 1 or 2 projects in the millions by a 6-county consortium as well. So there's some kind of unusual projects, this looks like to me anyway. These aren't like wastewater projects or something that we've seen before. These are big items, big ticket items. So I don't know. We'll see at the end of the month what the prioritization sounds like. But at least we've got the downtown street on the list, which is the starting point, and it's going to take more than probably we're getting as regular maintenance. It hasn't been maintained really in a long time, and it's just going to have to be rebuilt, is what it's going to have to be. So anyway, thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to know about that CIB list? I can't hear them. They're muted, that's why.
Okay. So I'm just glad that Michael Bryant let us know that we could add things to our list. And then what I was able to do from the reminder that he sent out, we had to put in a list of capital assets.
Yeah.
So I did the list of capital assets while Jim was updating the CIB possible projects. So we're good to go. There's an informational meeting. I don't know that I have the date. I think it's April 23rd or March 23rd on CIB. And we'll need to be on that so that we see how to put in the project and do it correctly. But I think that email went to Jim and myself, and I'll circulate it to everybody else. Any questions on CIB? All right, then under other. Yesterday, we were notified that we were awarded the Community Development Block Grant in the amount of $128,383. And this is to redo the community center and have a permanent food pantry in there. It's not for town offices as much as it is to revamp the community center for public use and space. So the design covered the back part of the community center behind, to the side of the auditorium, gymnasium. So the 5 offices that are there, the 2 bathrooms, some outdoor ADA work, some indoor bathroom work. I was pleasantly surprised to see that we got it. I didn't think that we would qualify in terms of points. But one of the things that we get points for is for previous projects that were completed and done well and in compliance. And we got that for our 50-year water study. So I think that really helped us. And a food pantry, a permanent food pantry, is definitely something that they like to throw money into. And So the next thing on that will be a second public hearing and a workshop that we have to attend, and then submitting a grant. So nothing really will happen other than the public hearing. There won't be much that anybody will see happening before September 30th. We'll have to put it out for bid and do some things like that. But
Will the bid encompass the design as well as the construction, or is that a separate, are those two separate bids?
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that there was money set aside for the design, the engineering part of it.
Excellent. Thank you.
So, you're welcome. I'll be a little more prepared on that when I come back with the timeline of what we have to do.
And-
But
Yeah, and thank you to those people who helped out writing that grant. I believe Molly Schmidt was one, and I don't know who else, but it was kind of done really quickly, wasn't it, Ann? Like in 24 hours or something?
well, no, the actual application took a lot longer. But Molly Schmidt and her architectural firm that she works for in Moab, and Sam Weldon really kicked it in at the end, because like 3 days before it was due, I found out that we needed to have an architect, and we needed this, and we needed that, and they kicked it up. We had a box of candy sent to the architectural firm, and it never made it, so I got to follow up on that, and then find something nice for Sam Weldon for taking the time to do it. And then we'll get everything set up for the bidding. Anybody else have another?
Motion to adjourn.
It's 7:06. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting's adjourned. I'm turning off the tape recorder.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
everybody.
much. Thanks all. Thank you all.